It is the greatest magic trick in human history. But it wasn't performed on a stage. It wasn't performed for applause. It was performed on your wallet. And the trick was so elegant, so quiet, that 50 years later, the audience, you, still doesn't realize the show is over. Look at your life today. Technology is faster. Production is more efficient. We have computers in our pockets that are more powerful than the machines that sent men to the moon. By every logical metric, life should be cheaper, easier, and less stressful than it was for your grandfather. But it isn't. You are working longer hours. You are running faster just to stay in the same place. A house that a factory worker could buy with 3 years of salary in 1960 now takes a dual-income couple 30 years to pay off. Why? Did we forget how to build houses? Did we forget how to grow food? No. We didn't lose our ability to produce. We lost our ability to measure value. There's a specific date when the math broke. A specific Sunday evening when the rules of the game were rewritten without your vote, without your permission, and without your knowledge. August 15th, 1971. The day the money died. To understand the crime, we have to look at the victim, the dollar. Before 1971, money wasn't just paper, it was a receipt. It was a claim check. Imagine you go to a coat check at a theater, and you give them your coat, and they give you a ticket. That ticket has no value on its own. You can't wear the ticket. The ticket is only valuable because it proves you own a coat. If the theater gives out more tickets than there are coats, they are committing fraud. For most of American history, the dollar was that ticket. It was backed by gold. Physical, heavy, undeniable gold. This system was established in 1944 at a place called Bretton Woods. As World War II was ending, the global powers sat down and agreed. The US dollar will be the world's anchor because the US dollar is as good as gold. The price was fixed. $35 equals 1 ounce of gold. This wasn't just about shiny rocks. This was about discipline. Gold is a cruel master to politicians. It is honest. You cannot print gold. You cannot vote for more gold. It restricts the government. If a politician wanted to spend billions on a war or a social program, they had to tax you first. They had to take the money from your pocket to spend it. They couldn't just conjure it out of thin air. Gold was the handcuffs on the politicians. It forced the government to live within reality. And because of this reality, something beautiful happened in the economy. From 1948 to 1971, the American economy worked like a balanced equation. As productivity went up, meaning workers made more stuff per hour, wages went up by the exact same amount. It was a fair deal. You work harder, you build better machines, the company makes more money, and you get paid more. The rising tide actually did lift all boats. A single income could support a family, buy a home and a car. This wasn't a fantasy. This was the mathematical result of sound money. But there was a problem. The handcuffs were starting to chafe. Fast forward to the late 1960s. The United States is trying to do 2 expensive things at once. 1, fight a massive unpopular war in Vietnam. 2, build a massive welfare state at home known as the Great Society. War costs money. Welfare costs money. Under the gold standard, the U.S. should have raised taxes to pay for this. But raising taxes is political suicide. No president wants to say, I'm raising your taxes to pay for a war across the ocean. So they cheated. They started printing more tickets than there were coats in the check room. They printed more dollars than they had gold in the vault. They flooded the world with paper dollars to pay for bombs and butter, betting that nobody would notice. But the French noticed. France, led by Charles de Gaulle, was a skeptic. He looked at the mountain of dollars the U.S. was printing and said, I don't think you have the gold to back this up. So de Gaulle did something legendary. He didn't just complain. He sent the French Navy. He sent ships to New York Harbor to cash in his paper dollars and take the physical gold back to France. He wanted the coats, not the tickets. Other nations saw this and panicked. Switzerland, Spain, Germany, they all started lining up at the U.S. gold window. We want our gold, please. The U.S. gold reserves began to bleed out. The vaults at Fort Knox were emptying. The Grand Bluff was being called. President Richard Nixon was trapped. He had 2 choices. Choice A, admit the U.S. was bankrupt, stop the spending, induce a recession, and tighten the belt. The honest choice. Choice B, change the rules of the game so he couldn't lose. The political choice. Which one do you think he picked? It is the weekend of August 13th, 1971. Nixon summons his top economic advisors to Camp David, the presidential retreat in the mountains. It is a secret meeting. The press is told nothing. The atmosphere is tense. Imagine a group of men realizing they have gambled away the mortgage money, trying to figure out how to tell the family. They argued for 3 days. The phones were cut off. They were drafting a plan that would fundamentally alter the operating system of the entire planet. On Sunday night, August 15th, Nixon interrupted the popular TV show Bonanza to address the nation. He looked calm. He looked authoritative. He looked like a man solving a problem, not a man causing a catastrophe. He said these famous words, I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Temporarily. That was the lie that swallowed the world. He sold it as a defense against international speculators. He framed it as a patriotic move to protect the American dollar. He told the public that their money would still buy just as much at the grocery store. Your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today, he promised. In that moment, the dollar ceased to be a receipt for gold. It became a receipt for nothing. It became fiat currency. Fiat is Latin for let it be done. It is money by command. It has value only because the government says it does, and because you possess the faith that it does. The anchor was cut. The ship was now drifting in the open ocean with no map and no compass. So the gold window closed. The handcuffs were off. The government could now print as much money as it wanted without needing to find gold to back it up. You might ask, okay, so they printed money. Why does that make me poorer? Why did my wages stop growing? This is the part they don't teach you in school. When new money is created, it doesn't appear in everyone's pocket at the same time. It doesn't get airdropped equally over the country. It enters the system at the top. This is called the Cantillon Effect, named after an 18th century French economist who realized a dark truth about inflation. Imagine the economy is a dry sponge. The new money is water. You pour the water on top of the sponge. Who gets wet first? The people at the top, the banks, the government contractors, the large corporations. When the government prints $1 billion, they give it to a big bank or defense contractor. These entities get the money first. Crucially, they get to spend this new money before prices go up. The bank takes this free cash and buys stocks or buys up real estate. This drives up the price of assets. The CEO gets his bonus. The corporation buys back its own shares. They are swimming in the new money while the prices of goods are still the old prices. They steal the purchasing power. Then the money trickles down. The corporation hires a subcontractor. The subcontractor buys materials. Slowly, the money moves through the system. By the time the money reaches you, the teacher, the welder, the retail manager, the game is rigged. Because by the time the money hits your bank account, the extra cash in the system has already bid up the price of everything else. The house you wanted is now 20% more expensive. The steak at the grocery store is up 15%. Gas is up. You get the money last, but you pay the higher prices first. The Cantillon Effect is a transfer of wealth. It is a siphon. It sucks value from the people who work for money, you, and transfers it to the people who are close to the money printer, them. Before 1971, if you worked harder, you got richer. After 1971, if you worked harder, you stayed the same. But if you owned assets, if you were already rich, you went to the stratosphere. Look at that chart again. The one where the lines split, that upper line, that's productivity. That's how hard you work. The lower line, that's your compensation. The giant gaping mouth in the middle, that is the wealth that was stolen from the working class and transferred to the asset holding class via the mechanism of inflation. They didn't lower your wage. They just diluted the money you were paid in. It's the perfect crime. If a thief breaks into your house and steals 2% of your furniture every year, you'd call the police. But if the government steals 2% of your money's value every year, they call it target inflation policy. So the 1970s began. The temporary measure became permanent. Suddenly, strange things started happening. Things Americans had never seen before. Oil prices tripled. Gold, which was fixed at $35, shot up to $800. Unemployment rose, but prices rose too. Something economists said was impossible, called stagflation. The logic of the world was breaking down. A father in 1965 could support a family of 5 on a single salary. By 1975, the mother had to enter the workforce just to maintain the same standard of living. They told us this was women's liberation, and socially, perhaps it was. But economically, it was a necessity disguised as a choice. 2 people were now working to buy what 1 person could buy a decade earlier. The treadmill had been sped up. And the man who sped it up, Richard Nixon, sat in the Oval Office, likely not realizing that he had just lit the fuse on a slow-motion bomb that would explode 50 years later. We are living in the explosion. We are living in the debris of August 15th, 1971. History is a vast early warning system. Most people walk through life looking at the ground. They see the prices rising, they feel the stress, but they never look up to see the strings. This channel is for the people who want to see the strings. We don't just read the news headlines. We dismantle the machine to see how the gears turn. We are building a library of the truth, financial noir for the modern mind. If you want to understand why the world is breaking, and not just watch it break, you need to join us. Click subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. Now, we are going to look at the illusion they built to keep you quiet. We're going to look at how they replaced high wages with easy debt, and how they turned a nation of owners into a nation of renters. We've covered the crime. Next, we cover the cover-up, so the wages flatlined. The gap opened up. In a sane world, this would have caused a revolution. If you tell a population, you will work just as hard, but you will get poorer every year, they will burn down the factory. So the system needed a way to hide the decline. They needed a painkiller. If they couldn't give you money, they decided to give you credit. Before 1971, debt was shameful. It was something you avoided. You saved up to buy a washing machine. You saved up to buy a TV. After 1971, debt became a product. The banks unleashed a flood of easy credit. Credit cards, car loans, student loans, home equity lines of credit. They told you, don't wait, buy it now. But this wasn't generosity, it was a trap. Think of it this way. In 1960, a worker bought a lifestyle with his wages, his production. In 2020, a worker buys a lifestyle with his debt, his future production. The standard of living looked the same. You still had a TV, you still had a car. In fact, the TV was bigger and the car was faster. But the foundation had turned to sand. The 1950s family owned their life. The modern family is renting their life from the bank. This is the illusion. We replaced net worth with access to credit. We replaced savings with monthly payments. The entire modern economy is built on this illusion. It relies on you spending money you don't have, to buy things you don't need, to impress people you don't like, all while paying 20% interest to a bank that printed the money for free. And while you were drowning in payments, the economy itself began to mutate. When money is sound, backed by gold, the best way to get rich is to make things. You build a car, you bake bread, you provide a service. When money is broken, fiat, the best way to get rich is to gamble. This is the birth of financialization. After 1971, the real economy, Main Street, slowed down. But the fake economy, Wall Street, went supernova. Why? Because when the government prints money, that money has to go somewhere. It doesn't go into building new factories. That's hard work and risky. It goes into assets. It flows into the stock market. It flows into real estate. Look at the stock market. It looks like a measure of success, right? The S&P 500 is at an all-time high. The news anchor screams with a smile. They are lying to you. The stock market isn't going up because companies are selling that many more widgets. The stock market is going up because the dollar is going down. If you measure the stock market in gold instead of dollars, it has been flat or down for decades. But the most painful place this money flowed into was your home, the housing trap. In the 1960s, a house was a place to sleep. It was a consumer good. Like a car, it got old, it needed repairs, and it was affordable. After 1971, houses became investment vehicles. Because cash was losing value so fast, inflation, rich people and corporations needed a place to store their wealth where it wouldn't rot. They started buying houses, not to live in, but to park money. This turned your shelter into their piggy bank. This is why a young couple today can't afford a home. They aren't just competing with other families looking for a place to sleep. They are competing with BlackRock, Vanguard, and pension funds that are using houses as a hedge against the inflation created by the Federal Reserve. The house didn't get better. The lumber didn't become made of diamonds. The money just broke. The price of the house is the same. The number of dollars required to buy it is what changed. And this created a permanent class divide, the feudalism of the 21st century. If you owned assets before 1971, houses, stocks, the inflation made you a king. You didn't have to work. Your house earned more than a doctor did. If you didn't own assets, the young, the poor, the working class, you were doomed to run on a treadmill that kept speeding up. This is why the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. It wasn't capitalism. Capitalism requires sound money and competition. This is cronism. This is a rigged casino where the house plays with infinite chips, and you play with your life savings. Let's bring this down to your kitchen table. What did the Nixon Shock do to your soul? It destroyed the concept of saving. For thousands of years, the path to success was simple. Work hard, spend less than you earn, save the difference. If you saved $100 in 1900, 20 years later, that $100 could still buy a lot of stuff. Today, if you save cash under your mattress, you are an idiot. The Federal Reserve has a stated target of 2% inflation. That means they plan to steal 2% of your wealth every year. And that's the official number. The real number is often much higher. This forces you to become a speculator. You can't just be a dentist or a carpenter or a teacher anymore. You have to be a dentist and a stock trader. You have to be a carpenter and a real estate investor. If you just hold cash, you bleed to death. This creates a high-stress, high-anxiety society, high-time preference. When money loses value, people stop thinking about the future. Why save for 10 years from now if the money will be worthless? You might as well spend it now. Buy the expensive sneakers, go on the trip, eat the expensive meal. Society becomes short-sighted. We stop building cathedrals that take 100 years to finish. We start building strip malls that last 10 years. We stop planting trees for our grandchildren. We start eating the seeds. This psychological shift from long-term building to short-term consumption is the direct result of the money breaking. It tears at the fabric of families. Parents work 2 jobs. Children are raised by screens. The community dissolves because everyone is too busy trying to stay afloat in a sea of liquidity. They stole the value of your labor. But worse, they stole your time. Every hour you worked to save that money was a piece of your life. When they devalue the currency, they are retroactively deleting those hours of your life. Economists look at the charts and say, GDP is up, the economy is growing. They are measuring the cancer and calling it muscle. They count the credit card fees as growth. They count the divorce lawyers as growth. They count the antidepressants as growth. But you feel the truth. You feel it when you go to the grocery store and the bag is lighter, but the bill is heavier. You feel it when you look at house prices and realize you might never own your own land. You are living in a silent depression. It's not a depression of falling prices, like the 1930s. It's an inflationary depression, a depression where the numbers go up, but the quality of life goes down. And it all traces back to that Sunday in 1971. When Nixon closed the gold window, he didn't just change monetary policy. He broke the contract between the government and the people. He gave the state the power to tax you without passing a law. He gave them the power of the printing press. And like anyone with a superpower, they abused it. They printed to pay for wars. They printed to pay for bailouts. They printed to pay for votes. And you paid the bill. So here we are, 50 years after the crime. We are living in the late stages of a massive experiment. The experiment was, can we print our way to prosperity? The answer is staring us in the face. We built a world on debt. The government owes trillions. Corporations owe trillions. You owe thousands. And the only way to keep this machine running is to print more money to pay the interest on the old money. It is a Ponzi scheme. And like every Ponzi scheme in history, from Charles Ponzi to Bernie Madoff, it requires an exponential amount of new victims to keep the scam going. But we are running out of victims. The math is becoming undeniable. Look at this. The US government now spends more on interest payments on its debt than it spends on its entire military. Think about that. We are spending more to pay for the past than to defend our future. When a currency is not anchored to reality, gold, it is anchored to trust. And trust is a finite resource. We are watching the trust evaporate. Countries are moving away from the dollar. Central banks are buying gold at record rates, the very thing Nixon told them to ignore in 1971. They know what is coming. They're preparing for the lifeboat while telling you to stay on the Titanic and enjoy the band. 1971 was the first shock. It severed money from value. The next shock will be severing money from freedom. Because the system is breaking, the architects have a new plan. They can't fix the money, so they will try to lock it down. They are discussing central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, programmable money. Imagine a dollar that they can turn off if you spend it on the wrong things, a dollar that expires if you don't spend it fast enough, a dollar that is not your property, but a permission slip from the state. This is the logical conclusion of the path we started on August 15, 1971. First, they took the gold. Then, they took the value. Next, they will take the anonymity. It is a control grid, and it is being built right now under the guise of convenience and safety. I'm not telling you this to scare you. Fear is useless. Fear paralyzes. I'm telling you this to arm you. The people who understood 1971 made fortunes. They bought gold. They bought real estate. They bought hard assets. They didn't listen to the politicians. They watched the math. You have the same opportunity today. The fiat system is a game of musical chairs. The music is slowing down. You need to find a chair before it stops. What is a chair? Anything they cannot print. They can print dollars. They can print euros. They can print yen. They cannot print land. They cannot print gold. They cannot print commodities. And they cannot print mathematical scarcity, like Bitcoin. You must opt out of their game and build your own. You must become your own central bank. Do not save in their currency. Invest in reality. The world didn't just get harder by accident. It was designed to be this way. The stress you feel, that isn't a personal failure. That is the system working exactly as intended. It is siphoning your energy to keep the machine alive. But now, you see the strings. Nixon's shock was the moment the matrix was switched on. But knowledge is the red pill. Once you understand the Cantillon Effect, you can't unsee it. Once you understand the difference between money and currency, you can't be fooled. We are entering a volatile decade. The 2020s will make the 1970s look like a picnic. History is about to rhyme. This channel is your survival guide. We are going to document every crack in the dam. We are going to explore the forgotten history of finance, the crimes of the central banks, and the future of value. We don't sell hope, we sell clarity. If you want to stay asleep, watch the news. If you want to wake up, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell. The timeline is accelerating and you don't want to miss the next update.